Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the navigation chapter, which is right here. We're already on that page. So let's introduce the navigation. If you haven't seen my previous videos, this right here on the left stays the same in all the chapters, other than the fact that the chapter name in this lower left hand corner and the page number change according to what this little light dash is hovering over. Page 1, page 2, which is your present position. Page 3, which gives you an idea of what the time and the department time and so on and so forth. And page 4, which is, believe it or not, is a moving map. You have to put this in perspective. This technology is many years old, and back then this was the moving map, and it was top of the line. Compared to today's moving map, it may not be impressive, but it does the job. So let's start with page number 1. Let's scroll back to page number 1. Again, this is the distance from where you are to the next waypoint that you are flying towards. In this case, you're flying direct to KORD, which is O'Hare Airport in Chicago. In your aircraft, this would actually show ground speed, and this very likely will be in the leg mode unless you have it on OBS or unless you have it to execute an approach. Again, the fourth line is the chapter and the page number. Now, on the navigate chapter, page 1, we have the following. Before we dig deeper, notice that some fields have this greater than sign, like this field and this field. These are special fields that you can toggle and cycle through different values. So let's take it from the top. When you navigate, and this is very likely where you're going to spend most of your time using the GPS on this screen. If you happen to be flying from one waypoint to another, then you'll have a waypoint right here, says where you're coming from, and waypoint right here says where you're going to, and the flag in between would be simply this little arrowhead. However, currently in our example, we are going directly from wherever we are, not necessarily from any leg in the flight plan. In this example, say we're either lost or we are diverting because of an emergency, and we actually activated the direct to and entered KORD and hit enter, and that tells us that we are now going directly to KORD. So how do we go directly to KORD? The rest of the lines here will help you navigate from where you are to KORD. This first one is a CDI scale, and because it has this greater than 2 sign, it tells you that you have alternatives to what you can display in this field. To see what the alternatives are, and this applies to every field on every page that has a greater than sign, you first turn your cursor on, and as long as it's flashing over that field, you go to the clear button, this button right here, and it's cycled through by clicking once. Here's another option, clicking again. Here's a third option, and if you click one more time, it goes back to where you started. So it's cyclic, it goes in cycles. So this is just like the needle on a VOR CDI you're used to on that round dial. The arrow, the triangle right here, serves as the to or from direction, just like on the CDI, the circular one. This happens to be pointing to direction 2. If it was reversed and pointing downwards or backwards, that means it's from. Now each one of these plus signs is a dot on the CDI, and this little vertical bar behind the arrowhead actually moves as you fly away from your course, and it'll tell you if you're 1 dot, 2 dots off. 2 dots means you're 2 miles away. 5 dots means you're 5 miles away. How do I know that? If I go to clear again, I see the scale is 5 nautical miles. And what that means, between the arrowhead, the center of this CDI, all the way to the left is 5 miles. And since we have 5 dots, that each dot is 1 mile. Same thing to the right of that. This, of course, changes as you go into an approach mode, but we'll talk about that later. Suppose you are more than 5 miles off course. So this bar will go all the way to the left, but then, just like a regular CDI, you don't know how far off. The advantage to this GPS is you can then click clear, and it will tell you what needs to be done. It says fly left, and it'll give you a distance, and it's most likely going to be more than 5 nautical miles, and it'll tell you exactly to fly left 6.5 nautical miles, or fly right, or whatever. This comes in handy when you're way off the course by more than 5 nautical miles. Now you can control, one more clear, you can control the scale of the CDI by ensuring that the third option is flashing, and using the inner button, inner knob, you can turn it left or right, and you can see the scale changing. I'm going to go back to number 5. And in this case, I'm going to click clear again. And this is what I like to see. And then I can turn the big dial to the right to go to the next field that I can change. But before we get to this, let's read number 3. Line number 3 tells us desired track, meaning the GPS calculated from your present position to the desired direct to waypoint a course, and it's telling you to turn your plane and your navigation equipment and CDI to match 170 heading. If you're not on 170 heading, you will not only get this vertical bar to move left or right, it will also tell you exactly which heading you're on. As an example, your desired track is 170, and you're supposed to be flying 170. If you're not, it might tell you you're flying 150 or 200. So you'll get to know what you're actually flying and what you need to fly, and adjust your airplane to make these two numbers match. Now, the fourth line is also saying this is the OBS direction, which is a bearing to 170, and these two normally match. But since it's flashing and it has a greater than sign, let's look at pushing the clear button to see what options we have. This option gives us the reverse of the 172, which is clearly 351 from. If I hit clear again, the VNAV option comes on. VNAV is a complicated function that we'll have to come back to it in an advanced lesson. In a nutshell, if you set up this GPS correctly, it would help you by telling you when you are so much distance from a specific point at such an altitude, and you want to get to that point at a certain altitude. Like if you're going to Leesburg and you want to be below the 1500 Class B ring, you can set it up to tell you to start coming down at a specific feet per minute descent rate to reach that point in time to be below 1500, for example. We'll come back to that later. And in this case, I'm going to go back to the first option. I'm going to turn the cursor off. This right here, I believe, will be your time to get to that point. I'm not quite sure about that, but we'll look into it. So that's the page 1 in a nutshell. Now we have flipped to page 2. All right. Now notice that instead of the ground speed on this side, now I have the airport identifier right there. And in its place, it's telling me that it's showing me my present position. My present position is in reference to a VOR or a waypoint, in this case OSH, which is a Oshkosh VOR, and it'll tell me based on that I am on the 185 radial from Oshkosh, and I am located at 0.4 nautical miles away from that Oshkosh. So that kind of pins down your exact position. So part of going direct to KORD, maybe you were lost or you were diverting and so on and so forth, and you want to know where you're at. Assuming you don't have an iPad in your cockpit, this would be a great handy tool to pinpoint your location by saying you are 0.4 nautical miles on the 185 radial from Oshkosh VOR. Now notice that this field has a greater than sign, which means I can turn the cursor on and I can use the clear button to see my present position in terms of latitude and longitude. To be honest with you, I don't know how many people actually can use that readily, but I can't. Personally, I can't do it. So I'm going to clear again and stick with my present position based on a VOR or waypoint and a radial and a distance. I will turn the cursor off and then move on to page number 3. Turn the inner dial to the right. Here's some more information about your navigation. Your current time is Central Standard Time, and it's in Zulu 24 format. It's 13:43, meaning it's 1:45, almost 2 o'clock in Central Standard Time. In your real aircraft, when you depart, when you start down the runway and you go beyond 30 nautical miles per hour, the GPS makes a note of what time you actually took off from that airport. It then calculates your estimated time of arrival to the active waypoint. In this case, it is O'Hare Airport, and it will tell you when you're expected to arrive there. And the flight will tell you the duration of your flight time in here, like 1 hour and 30 minutes, and so on and so forth, how long you've been flying. Notice in this page there are no fields that have greater than 2, so you don't have options to change the values in here. I can now then go to page number 4, which is a great page. Initial look at this, those of you who have seen iPads or the 430 Garmin's or whatever, they're going to say, oh my God, what is this? So let's take this apart. Notice that this is the only page that does not have the chapter and the page number on it. But you can always remember this is navigation page number 4. And what we're looking at is, again, the distance to your active waypoint, the active waypoint itself, and what mode you're in. In this case, it's a leg mode. And your ground speed is showing 0 because we're using a simulator. Whereas if you're in the aircraft, of course, it'll give you the ground speed as compared to your indicated airspeed. On the right-hand side, there's a lot to be talked about. Right off the bat, what you're looking at here, it could be cleaned up and minimized by simply going to the clear button without activating anything, without activating the cursor or nothing, just as is. Go to the clear, click once, and it takes out all the unnecessary or additional information. Click again, and it puts it there. Now, to control what is displayed here, you can actually turn the cursor on, and notice that this field now is flashing and the menu above it. So this field right here is the zoom factor, and you can simply turn the inner knob left or right to increase the zoom factor or decrease the zoom factor. Basically zoom in and zoom out. Notice that the graphics are getting smaller as the number gets bigger, and I go in reverse. Notice that the graphics are looking bigger as the number gets smaller, right? If I keep turning that knob lower and lower and lower and lower, eventually it's going to hit auto. Auto is an option that you might want to consider, because it lets the GPS zoom in and out to show you the 2 points you're flying from and to without you having to zoom in and out manually. That's an option you might want to work with. But let's go up to menu, because it has some options that we want to take advantage of. And to do that, we use the outer knob and turn it to the left. And now we have a menu flashing. Notice also on the left-hand side it says hit enter as a response. So I go to the enter button, and now I have a menu. So what this is telling me is special use areas, and that includes Class B, Class C, airspace, and so on and so forth, military operation zones and areas, any other TFR zones, and so on and so forth, are under the SUA, special use area. And in this case, GPS is not showing the graphics for that. If you want to show the graphics for that, you take the inner knob and turn it left, and it's on. To go to the next one, you use the bigger knob and then do the same thing. So this is saying, do you want me to show you where the VORs are along your path? On means yes, show it to me. Off mean no. Again, on and off is the inner knob, left or right. And notice the immediate response in the back, the graphics. So it's on, and I'm going to go to the next one using the outer dial, the big dial. And airports, do I want to see them or not? I can turn them on or off based on my needs. And I go to the next one. This is really interesting because you have multiple options of how you want to see your moving map. N with an arrow next to it, meaning the orientation of the map is you're flying north, and everything you see is relative to north. So you might see your plane going left and right, left meaning west and right meaning east, or if you're going down, you're going west, you're going south. So it's all oriented towards north. Now I can change that with the inner knob to display it as desired track is north. Say your desired track is 090. So the map is oriented where 090 is up, meaning east is up, and everything else is rotated relative to that. I personally cannot use that. I like the north up, but it's up to you. I can rotate the knob, inner knob, one more time, and I would have track up, meaning it doesn't matter what the desired track is or what the GPS is telling you to fly. Whatever direction you fly is basically north, and everything else is oriented around that. I rotate it one more time. It's cyclic, so I'm looking for N north. I keep turning until I find it, and voila, there it is. And in this case, I would click my cursor, it'll go away, and I ended up with the zoom factor I used and the menu selections I've used. So it doesn't look good, so I'm going to go back again and say cursor, And this is auto. This is a good point. Let's cover this again. It's set on auto, so the 160 was automatically selected because the present position to the active waypoint needs to be both in the picture or on the screen. So the GPS had to squeeze it so much until it gets the both points. Notice that there are 124 nautical miles between these 2 points, and that's why the 160 was selected. I can simply click on clear to show me exactly what that means. So here's Oshkosh Airport, and here's O'Hare Airport, and that tells you where you're going. Now in flight, you'll actually see your airplane along the path, hopefully, or somewhere on the screen, and you can tell if you're flying the correct way or not. Now, let's say you want to divert again. Let's say you're going from Oshkosh to O'Hare, and all of a sudden you need to divert. This example is not set up correctly because we don't have a lot of waypoints, but let's say we have multiple ways along the way in the flight plan. I can pull this inner knob out, and I can cycle through it left and right, and I should see all the waypoints in the flight plan. In this case, we only have 2, but assume we have multiple. I keep cycling through it until I find the right one, and then I would hit direct to, and it will be put into the field value here under direct to, and I would hit enter, and then I am diverting to that point. That comes in handy when you have a long flight plan or you're shooting an approach and you were told to directly go to a specific point. I'll try to come back to this when I have a flight plan in here that works better with this example. In this case, since I don't want to execute a direct to, I can simply clear and then clear it again, and I'm back to it, and I would just push the button, the dial in, and that menu disappears. And that basically covers all 4 pages of navigation. And if I turn the inner knob to the right one more time, I go back to the first page. So it's up to you whether you use this, because it does have where you're going from, where you're going to, how far or how well you're doing staying on course, and whether you're going to or from. All of this is right here, and tell you specifically which track you should be going on, which is basically your heading on the heading indicator. And it'll tell you which track you're actually traveling, and then you can tell what you need to do, turn left or right to get back to 170. And all that stuff is right at your fingertip. I use this quite frequently, even in my IFR training. And if you don't like this, you might want to consider this. Declutter, and you see your plane and gives you an idea where you are on this. This screen comes in handy also when you're shooting an approach, because it also shows you where you are in relation to the different fixes: the initial fix, intermediate fix, final fix, and the missed approach fix. And this basically concludes everything I want to talk about in this chapter, which is navigation chapter right here. I thank you, and I hope to see you again on a different video that talks about the various chapters left to be covered.